Keeping them honest tonight, potentially hundreds of military employees and contractors who may have bought child pornography online but haven't been prosecuted or even in some cases investigated. That's right, you heard me, child pornography. As many as 1,700 names, according to a U.S. Senator, on a list of 5,200 from an internet sting operation overlooked the first time around 4 years ago. Only now are they supposedly getting a second look, and only after pressure from investigative reporters and the U.S. Senator you're about to hear from, Republican Charles Grassley. Pentagon porn story began in 2006. An Immigration and Customs Enforcement child pornography sting operation called Project Flicker produced payment records of about 5,200 people, many of whom provided Army or fleet zip codes or military email addresses. Subsequently, the Pentagon's investigative branch, DCIS, began going through the ICE list to identify who actually was a DoD employee or a contractor. The investigation, however, only ran for 8 months and only cross-checked some 3,500 names for Pentagon ties, according to a senator. According to DCIS documents revealed in a Freedom of Information Act request, out of that 3,500, investigators uncovered 264 employees or contractors, including staffers for the Secretary of Defense and contractors at the NSA. 9 people had top security clearances, but only about 20% of those 264 people were completely investigated. Fewer still were prosecuted, and after about 8 months, the entire probe was halted. It left about 1,700 names totally unchecked, 1,700 alleged kiddie porn customers, an unknown number of whom may still work in some capacity for the Defense Department. Late last summer, after investigations by the Boston Globe and Yahoo News revealed the figures, a Pentagon spokesman promised to reopen the investigation, conceding that DCIS had stopped due to lack of resources. DCIS says it is now revisiting all 5,200 names, telling Senator Grassley's staff they've now identified 302 employees or staffers. The Pentagon's IG telling us, and I quote, "Any suggestion that the DoD Office of Inspector General or its criminal investigative arm, the DCIS, is not taking Operation Flicker and the issue of child pornography seriously is in error." But Senator Grassley says he is still not getting the cooperation he needs from the Pentagon. I spoke to him earlier. Senator Grassley, you were told that 5,200 Defense Department employees had allegedly purchased child porn, and yet you're saying only 3,500 of those names were cross-checked by a defense investigator to see if they were really DoD personnel. That's mind-boggling. Why weren't all of them cross-checked?
Well, we don't have an answer to that question, but it's quite obvious that the other 1,700 should have been cross-checked, and that's one of the answers to my questions that I want answered, and the implication of our questions is they ought to be cross-checked. We ought to find out, because we're talking about not just general pornography here. We're talking about child pornography, and child pornography, taking that down, is a crime. And also, there's an added factor here, considering the fact that there's a lot of secured information, national security information, that the world shouldn't know, that a lot of times foreign operatives will use this sort of criminal activity to blackmail, to get information. So there's a lot of things here that are involved because it's a Defense Department issue as opposed to any other department of government.
Right. I mean, sir, if your numbers are correct, 1,700 people out there who allegedly purchased child porn, we don't know if they were ever cross-checked or investigated, right?
That's true, and there's been some other names in the hundreds where there's the names have actually been given out that we don't know what's going to be done about them. Now, there's some reason to believe that it's a criminal act. It's been so far since it's happened that they could be stale. Maybe you can't have criminal prosecution, but we would be looking at administrative action to be taken against these people. And I want to know who they are and what administrative action's being taken.
Yeah, because what's even more startling is that of the 302 people confirmed as DoD personnel or contractors, only 70 of them were actually investigated. How is it possible that all of them weren't investigated?
Well, here's, I think, the thing that overrides everything you just asked, and that is we ask criminal investigators in the Division of Defense that does that, the extent to which supervisors of these people knew that this was going, and the criminal investigators couldn't even answer that question for us when we had a briefing from them.
So wait a minute, so you're saying we don't even know if the supervisors of these people were told that their employees may have downloaded child porn?
That's the question that my staff asked of the criminal investigators, and they could not answer the question whether or not supervisors had been informed of this. And if supervisors don't know about it, you know, it's a bad environment that things like this can happen in the first place, and worse, that it's a criminal act when things are downloaded.
Until you started raising this issue, I mean, this investigation was closed by the Defense Department. They only investigated for about 8 months. Do you think the Pentagon just didn't take this seriously?
Well, it's quite obvious that they didn't take it seriously, because it wasn't only that I was asking the questions. It wasn't until it started getting questions from people like you who are journalists that this got their attention, and we got any consideration and reopening of this in the first place.
Well, one of your staffers told us that getting information from the Defense Department on this has been like pulling teeth. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah. Oh, I've been involved in oversight of the Defense Department for almost all the years I've been in the United States Senate, and it's very difficult to get answers from a lot of bureaucracies, but it's quite more difficult in the Defense Department.
Senator Grassley, I appreciate your time. We'll continue to follow this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Up next.
The Defense Department releasing brand new details into an investigation involving child pornography and dozens of its workers and contractors, some with top-level security clearance. Not only are these very serious accusations, but investigators say some of the people involved were handling the nation's most sensitive secrets, potentially making this a matter of national security. Chief Fox Report correspondent Jonathan Hunt with the news. Appalling story, Jonathan. Do we know more about these people and their security clearances?
Well, we don't know their exact job titles, John, but what we do know is that they did appear to have been working, some of them, at high levels across a range of government agencies. Take a look at this, for instance, the National Security Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, and the very secretive Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Others also worked on actual military installations, including Edwards Air Force Base in California and also the California-based Naval Air Warfare Center. So they had access to military secrets in some cases and military hardware, John.
Are all these suspects under arrest?
They're not all under arrest. We got 94 pages of investigative material from the Defense Department today, including dozens of specific individuals. They have not all been arrested, though. Some have been tried, some have been sentenced, but some have, the cases simply fell apart because of lack of evidence. And legal experts tell us it is always very difficult to prosecute child porn cases, not least because it's difficult to prove who exactly was on any given computer. Listen.
Who has the password? Who has the identification to get into that? Was it you who opened the computer and I went on it? Those are very difficult aspects in prosecuting. Then there's finding the victims. Are they abused victims? Are they underage? Did they appear overage? You know, there's a lot of difficulties built right into child pornography cases.
But Josh Hanshaft also told me it is imperative that the government find a way to prosecute in these cases because they are so important and so disturbing.
And this isn't just about workers committing crime.
No, it's not. The big fear here is that there is a possibility that these people open themselves to blackmail by a foreign power that wants to get information about our military secrets, or even terrorists. So the Defense Department is very concerned. It says they are taking all of these cases very seriously indeed, John.
I'll bet they are. Jonathan Hunt.
All right, despite the DOD taking steps to limit access to various websites, most notably child pornography, the Pentagon apparently has come under investigation for links to the proliferation of graphic material. Called Project Flickr, some 5,000 individuals have been identified as having subscriptions to child porn sites, including many DOD-affiliated persons. So this ongoing national investigation has now prompted the House to introduce a bipartisan bill that would help the DOD stop the use of its network to, quote, possess, procure, or produce child pornography. Joining us to discuss this, investigative journalist Ben Swan. So Ben, the Pentagon already takes measures to limit worker access to stuff like porn by rolling out what they call the Personal Electronic Device, PED policy, where workers have to drop off their phones and lockers before entering their offices. All their online searches are accessible by security if or when needed. Their Wi-Fi access is monitored in digital security sweeps. So how is this happening?
Well, it's happening because even though there is a certain amount of limitation on access, those who are working in the Department of Defense, clearly it appears to be thousands of individuals in the Department of Defense, are finding ways around this, specifically by using the Department of Defense IP addresses and also apparently peer-to-peer sharing within the department's network. So this study that was done on this issue, and it is pretty horrifying, Manila, to consider this. It shows that the Department of Defense ranked 19th out of almost 3,000 networks in terms of peer-to-peer sharing of child pornography. That is absolutely incredible. This bill attempts to essentially say, look, we're not doing enough to stop it from coming in, but we're also not doing enough in the Department of Defense to go after those individuals who are being recognized as the ones who are perpetrating this.
So Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is the co-author to this bill. She said this, quote, "The notion that the Department of Defense's network and Pentagon-issued computers may be used to view, create, or circulate such horrifying images is a shameful disgrace and one we must fight head-on." Now, the fact that the Pentagon workers, be they civil or military or otherwise, already submit to a gauntlet of daily scrutiny just going in and out of work, is it fair then to the tens of thousands who are completely innocent to further allow that much more government intrusion into their, their digital devices or the things that they're dealing with on their computers?
Well, remember that what's being talked about here is not an intrusion into someone's personal device or even their home. This is about saying Department of Defense computers are being misused to share, to spread, to access child pornography. And when you step into an office, whether it's a Department of Defense office or it's the offices at RT America, wherever you go into an office, you do not have the right to simply use the technology within that office space however you want, and you certainly don't have the right to use it in a criminal manner. So essentially this bill is trying to do, again, two things. It's trying to limit that and crack down on the misuse of those computer systems, but it also is going after those individuals. One of the things that this bill attempts to do, and there's a Senate version of it put together by Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, but essentially what these two bills are trying to do is say, look, the Department of Defense does not have an adequate way of responding to this, of tracking down and investigating who as an individual is misusing these computers, who is sharing these pornographic images of children, who is sending them to whom. And so one of the things it does is the bill actually opens up civilian law enforcement to come in and to work with the Pentagon and with the DOD to actually investigate and to track down who is misusing, again, these computers for this purpose. So the bill, it's about more than just stopping it. It's about going after those who have been perpetrating it, who so far aren't being gone after.
Now, Ben, you and I, obviously, we're both parents here, and this is something that is terrifying, I think, to anybody that is a parent. What about the bigger... Infuriating. I mean, it's disgusting and maddening. The bigger picture here, Ben, how do we, the people, crack down on this? It's a disgusting crime. How is this continuing to proliferate in a day where they can track your every movement and what you do?
Well, because clearly in this case, these are the people who are helping to do the tracking. I know NSA and a lot of these civilian agencies do, but when you reach a certain point within these military spaces, a lot of these people apparently feel that they can go untouched. And so far, they pretty much have. About 80% of the cases where child pornography has been sent through these DOD servers have not been prosecuted, have not even been looked at or tracked down. 80% of them, Manila. So the majority of the people who are doing this through the Department of Defense are not having to pay any kind of price for it. I think this is a very serious issue, but it's also an issue that we need to recognize is a very real issue. When people talk about child pornography or predators out there, we are being limited to a discussion of that, the creepy person who lives in a certain house, and that's where we want to talk about it. But when we talk about it on a bigger spectrum, military, government, those who are in power, people don't want to discuss it. It's a very real issue.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that there's some 25,000 people that go in and out of the Pentagon every single day, and a lot of these, I mean, they have to have some level of clearance to begin with, but I think some of the people that are not being prosecuted are some of the ones who have the highest clearances in this country. So that's kind of a scary thing to think about.
Some of these people we know have the highest classification in terms of classified access to information and material, and that's pretty scary.
That is scary that some of those people might be these gross individuals sharing this kind of information. All right, Ben Swan, as always, appreciate your take on this. Thank you.
Take a look at what is happening with our beloved CIA. Caught covering up rampant child sex crimes inside the agency. And this is something that's been going on for over a year. Stories from Free Thought Project, Matagoras. Imagine that it was your child who was raped by a CIA agent, and authorities tell you that they cannot prosecute the abuser because it may reveal state secrets. You know, just like the vaccine. I'm sorry, you can't have that vaccine. You can't do any tests on it because it's a state secret. Imagine an agency so secretive, so corrupt that they can literally get away with criminal sexual abuse of children. Then imagine that you are forced to pay for this agency. And despite knowing that their agents are abusing children and even admitting to it, they're avoiding any kind of legal ramifications. Well, there's no need to imagine it because it's happening in the CIA, and nobody is doing anything about it. Last December, here we are, a year later, practically, through multiple Freedom of Information lawsuits, BuzzFeed News obtained hundreds of internal CIA reports that detailed rampant abuse. According to the reports, despite multiple agents and contractors, at least 10 of them, being caught in child sex abuse situations, federal prosecutors have brought no charges. The abusers remain protected by the agency. Now, I think this is interesting because, BuzzFeed is not conservative. BuzzFeed is not out there saying, there's these pedophile rings and networks, like QAnon is saying. So it's not easily dismissed by that. Plus, they got the documents, right? They did a FOIA request. They got the documents. But guess what? The CIA is above the law because they are the actual top dog in our government, these secret agencies. It's been nearly a year since this information became public, yet there has been no investigation and essentially no interest by anyone in D.C. or the political establishment to hold them accountable. Think about that. Nobody, no Republican and no Democrat is bringing this up. I mean, you got people like MTG and others who, buying into the QAnon stuff, Matt Gaetz and everything. Why aren't they talking about this? Here's something real, and they don't want to talk about it. They might talk about Hunter. They might talk about Epstein. This is even worse, frankly, because, Epstein was connected with the intelligence agencies, with Mossad, blackmailing people. But this is our own CIA. They don't want to do anything about that. BuzzFeed reports that most of the cases were referred to U.S. attorneys for prosecution, but in an apparent quid pro quo scenario, the U.S. attorneys send the cases back to the CIA to handle them internally. They're literally above the law. There isn't anything that they can do that they'll be called on. As BuzzFeed points out, some of these crimes are utterly horrifying and involve toddlers. Quoting from BuzzFeed, Free Thought Project says, one employee had sexual contact with a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. He was fired. A second employee purchased 3 sexually explicit videos of young girls filmed by their mothers. He resigned. He wasn't even fired. A third employee estimated that he had viewed up to 1,400 sexually abusive images of children while on agency assignments. The records do not say what action, if any, the CIA took against him. A contractor who had arranged for sex with an undercover FBI agent posing as a child had his contract revoked. Well, so a couple of them got fired. One of them got resigned. Another one didn't have anything. But that's just a few of them. Out of all these monsters, only a single one was ever charged with a crime. In fact, that one individual, according to the report, was the only known case of a CIA staffer being charged with child and sex crimes ever. Why are we surprised about this, frankly? And why are the conservatives not looking at this? the conservatives, it's interesting to see the conservatives finally taking on the FBI. For years, the left took them on. And for years, they had talked about FBI's COINTEL program, which had focused on Martin Luther King and others. But the conservatives never really paid any attention until just recently, because it got highly politicized against conservatives. It had been politicized in the past against liberals, and conservatives were fine with that, just like the liberals are fine with it being weaponized against conservatives now. But we also had Gina Haspel, who lied us into the Iraq War with lies about weapons of mass destruction obtained by torture. We've seen the pictures of the sexual perversion at Abu Ghraib and other places, the really dark side of our government. And of course, Donald Trump promoted Gina Haspel, who got those lies and then covered up the torture, destroyed the videos of it. We can't have all these people testify. They might inadvertently be forced to disclose sources and methods. There you go. Just like, we can't show you the tests for these Trump shots, these genetic code injections. We got to keep this stuff sealed for 65 years, says the FDA. They're not a watchdog. They're not doing any oversight. They're co-conspirators in crimes. The official who noted that the agency has had a problem with child abuse images stretching back for decades said they understand the need to protect sensitive and classified equities. Said, however, for crimes of a certain class, whether it's an intelligence agency or not, you just have to figure out how to prosecute these people. Yet they haven't. And as Free Thought Project said, imagine it was your child who was raped by a CIA agent. And said, well, we can't do anything about it, because if we were to prosecute them, it might reveal some state secrets. See, the whole idea of national security, the preeminence of state secrets, and we can't tell you this and we can't tell you that, all of it is hidden. What happened to this country in the aftermath of the Second World War and this whole idea of national security? We're going to keep everything secret, got to keep, because, they might steal our plans for the nuclear bomb or whatever. All of that has created the kind of criminal corruption that we see that has now become so characteristic of our government in every area, because it's not just the CIA. Everybody is hiding what they're doing. Everything is hidden from us while they demand to know everything about us. If there are state secrets that are so important inside the CIA that children can be sexually abused with impunity, it's high time this organization is disbanded and eliminated, as children are the one thing that we should actually be protecting. Well, again, the CIA, the NSA, these things were created by executive order for the most part. The NSA said no to Congress, you can't even see our charter. That's secret. We were created by the president, by Truman, who was, I think, perhaps trying to get something to oppose the FBI, which he considered to be a Gestapo. So now we got all three of them operating as criminal gangs. BuzzFeed points out some of these crimes are utterly horrifying. Yeah, that's exactly what we see everywhere in all of this. So according to a report in The Hill, the End National Defense Network abuse was introduced in the wake of an investigation called Project Flicker, carried out by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This investigation identified over 5,000 individuals, including many affiliated with the Department of Defense, who were subscribed to child porn websites. The investigation was conducted by the Pentagon's Defense Criminal Investigation Service. It netted hundreds of suspects who work for or are affiliated with the DoD. Free Thought Project says, let that sink in. Hundreds of government employees are using taxpayer-funded official DoD networks and computers to view and share child pornography, essentially running a child porn network on a government system. Are you shocked? Unfortunately, after the bill was introduced, it went nowhere. just like the prosecution of the child predators inside the CIA has gone nowhere. The rampant abuse, says Free Thought Project, should be on the front page of every newspaper in the country, yet it remains buried under divisive headlines about Pelosi's husband and Kanye. That's what we're focused on, because they want us fighting each other. They want a civil war. They want a civil war even within the political parties. I think it's interesting. We'll see what happens with the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. The judge has ordered the unsealing of the names of 8 anonymous individuals. The only one that I have seen so far that has come out of this is one of the Pritzker family. Now, this is Tom. He's different from Governor Pritzker of Illinois. I've shown you the pictures in the past of Pritzker. All of them filthy rich with Hyatt chain money. And the governor of Illinois, Pritzker, has got a cousin who is a doppelganger for him, which is, but the guy is a transgender, goes by the name of Jennifer. And if you look at the picture of the two of them side by side, and it looks like, I called them Jethro and Jethrine from the Beverly Hillbillies. You know, they used to put Jethro Bodine and drag to be his sister, his cousin, or something. And that's what it looks like with those two Pritzkers. Now it turns out there's another one, Tom Pritzker. So besides, and when I talked about this in the past, the Pritzker family has been one of the big movers and shakers behind the transgender industry and coming after kids. And now we find that Tom Pritzker, associated with the same Hyatt family, has now had his name unsealed by the judge as somebody who was connected, a high-profile individual who was connected with Jeffrey Epstein. What a surprise. What a surprise. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing in the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.
You don't have a right stealing my identity. You don't have a right altering pictures. You don't have a right mutilating things. You need to get prosecuted, government man.